Hello and welcome to Brewers Daily, part of the Fan Arch Podcast Network. This episode is brought to you by Kalshi. Use promo code FANARCHBASEBALL to get $10 when you trade 10. I'm Dave Gasper. My goodness, do we have a lot to get to on the show today. The trade deadline has come and gone. The Brewers make a handful of moves there on deadline day. Trade with the Cardinals in the division here, and a trade with the Colorado Rockies. We'll get into all that. Matt Arnold, we also talked with him after the trade deadline. We'll get to some of his comments and looking at this rotation picture now. But the big headliner, I guess, for this trade deadline for the Brewers, Dustin May and JoJo Romero from the St. Louis Cardinals. The rare intra-division trade here. The Brewers getting Dustin May to help fortify this starting rotation. May having a pretty solid season there with St. Louis. Was a highly touted guy coming up, originally with the Dodgers. Has kind of bounced around a little bit. Injuries have kind of derailed him for a while, but he's been healthy for the past couple of years and has really started to kind of come into his own here and continue to develop. Has some high octane stuff. Fastballs averaging around 96 or so miles an hour. And he's got three different variations of that fastball. I think the Brewers are going to be able to get their hands on Dustin May and really kind of finish his development here into a really strong starting pitcher. So I do like this fit for the Brewers. In terms of getting Dustin May into the fold here. JoJo Romero, a reliever that's been pretty good. Dealing with appendicitis. So he had his appendix removed a couple of weeks ago. So he's still on the IL. He's going to be coming back in a couple of weeks, so it's going to take him a little bit of time to help out. But Dustin May is kind of the big get here for the Brewers to help out this starting rotation. So, he's a bit of a veteran, been around a while, but, it's not Tarek Skubal. It's not one of these kind of super established veteran guys with lots of postseason experience. But it's a guy with some really good stuff that the Brewers do very well in terms of developing and getting the most out of. Dustin May is a likely rental here, in terms of how this is going to be shaping up. So kind of short-term thing. But the Brewers paid a high price to get it. Very high price in sending away two outfield prospects who have been having breakout seasons. Josiah Ragsdale with Double-A Biloxi, and Alexander Frias with Low-A Wilson. Frias has just kind of bloomed almost out of nowhere here, dominating the Arizona Complex League, getting his promotion to Low-A Wilson and continuing to hit bombs over there. He's been having a really tremendous season, completely breaking out for this group. I mean, he's been a top 100 prospect on some lists. He legitimately has put himself on the radar there. Not just being a top 30 prospect guy. He was number 11, I want to say it was, on MLB Pipeline is what he was up to, and continuing to rise further on other lists. I mean, really, really high up there. A lot of belief in this kid, and the Brewers give him up for a rental there in Dustin May. Josiah Ragsdale, again, another guy with a ton of helium, 7th round pick out of Boston College, and he just absolutely raked for High A Wisconsin, and then he gets bumped up to Double-A Biloxi, and he's hitting like a homer every day. He's got 12 homers, I think, already in Biloxi. However, Ragsdale also has a near 30% strikeout rate in Biloxi, so that is potentially a warning sign there in terms of how sustainable his breakout may be. This could be a case of the Brewers simply selling very high on these two prospects, just with what they've been putting up. Their prospect value, their status. It's like, hey, look, it may not reach this level again. We're not convinced these guys are going to be the big time major leaguers, perhaps. So let's sell high on them while we can. It kind of feels like, though, the Brewers could have gotten more, just with how these guys have been performing, their prospect value. It felt like the Brewers could have gotten more than just a rental of Dustin May and a rental of JoJo Romero for both of those guys together. I mean, across the industry, this felt like a pretty big overpay here from the Brewers, that the Cardinals did really well in this trade, getting these guys back for Dustin May and JoJo Romero. So that is a tough part. And again, what makes it even worse is that it is in the division, that it is the St. Louis Cardinals that these guys will be playing for if they end up, breaking out and being these big league stars like they potentially could be. The ceiling is very high with those two prospects, especially with Frias. I mean, he's someone who, has potential to be maybe a top 10 prospect in all of baseball in another year or so. I mean, if he continues on this trend, he absolutely can. So, that there is some concern there with that. There is some risk with that to give those guys up. But the price for pitching is incredibly high, as we kind of saw for basically this entire trade deadline, except for Tarek Skubal. The price for him was not as high as we all thought it was going to be. But still, for the rest of the pitching market, you got to give something to get something, as Matt Arnold kind of talked about, and the Brewers end up giving up quite a high price tag there in order to get Dustin May to help fortify this starting rotation. So that's where the Brewers went. They went in the division for this, and I mean, I had kind of largely discounted Dustin May as a Brewers target because he was with St. Louis. I mean, it's been over a decade, I believe, since the last time the Brewers and the Cardinals made a trade together. I mean, they just simply don't do it because they are rivals in the division. The Brewers and Cardinals don't help each other out ever. Just like the Brewers and Cubs don't help each other out ever. That was kind of a bit of a surprise that the Brewers went that direction, but you see some of those other starting pitchers go off the board, and the Brewers had to pivot, and they end up getting themselves Dustin May. So that was the first trade that ended up happening on deadline day, and then it's like, okay, what else do the Brewers have in store? Well, they went to Colorado, to the Rockies, and they acquired Antonio Senzatella, who it seems like has been in Colorado forever. He has been there for a decade. Very long time that Antonio Senzatella has been there, but he's having a phenomenal season with the Rockies. And I think he's someone that the Brewers absolutely are going to be able to work with. I mean, he's got a 3.61 ERA out there in 34 games, covering 52 and a third innings. And, over his career, I mean, last couple of years, ERAs in the sixes and, the fours and the fives and all that. But he's also pitching in Colorado most of the time, so that doesn't help anybody out there. But with his stuff, his arsenal, the sinker that he throws and being able to get ground balls and things like that, that is something that the Brewers do tend to work with. They do tend to target and have a lot of success with. So Senzatella completely fits that mold for what the Brewers, like to get. He's not exactly as off the wall of a bullpen addition as I thought that they may have gone. Senzatella was an often talked about piece, but to get him out of Colorado there, also likely a rental. He has a club option for $14 million for next year, but there's no buyout on it. And with him being a reliever, there is zero chance the Brewers are going to be paying $14 million to have Antonio Senzatella on the team next year. And especially with no buyout, just easily going to let him go. Maybe they sign him back, sure, but not at that price. But Antonio Senzatella is now going to be coming in, and he is going to help fit into this rotation as well. Or not in this rotation, in this bullpen. So I think that's a very good addition. And for this one, the Brewers gave up a prospect package that was kind of more in line with what you'd be expecting. They give up Mark Manfredi Sr., a relief pitching prospect in the upper levels of the minors, and they give up outfielder Juan Martinez, who was down in Low A. Wilson, having a really good season as well, kind of breaking out in his own right, and pushing himself up the prospects list. Not quite as far as Alexander Frias, but still, arrow up guy was Martinez, and for that price, I mean, I'm comfortable giving that up for a guy like Senzatella here. That's a trade that seemed much more reasonable, seemed to make a whole lot more sense. I think the Rockies get a couple of really good options there, and the Brewers get someone who can really help them out. that's one that, just kind of felt like your more usual Brewers trade. It didn't feel like an overpay. It felt like a pretty good price there for that. There's someone that you can be excited about there in Martinez. And Manfredi is probably a middle reliever at best at the big league level, but he'll get a little bit more run potentially in Colorado, and get an opportunity to pitch there, whereas this Brewers bullpen would be a bit tougher to crack. So those are the trades the Brewers ended up making on deadline day. No additions for a bat or anything like that, but we'll get into that here. But you get two relievers, you get a starter, so you can kind of help fortify this pitching staff. And they're going to need to fortify it if they're going to be able to hold on to this division and win as many games as they can the rest of the way. And you can trade every single game on Kalshi here. And the Brewers coming off a tough loss there to the Pirates to open up this series, but the Brewers have Logan Henderson on the mound for the game tonight, and I think they're going to be able to bounce back here. And after maybe the hangover of the West Coast trip is a little bit off of them, the deadline's a bit off of them, I think the Brewers are going to come back and bounce back pretty well in this game. So I'm taking the Brewers at winning by over 1.5 runs, which is currently trading at 40% on Kalshi. That means a $100 trade can pay out $240 with a win. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house, and as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use promo code FANARCHBASEBALL to get $10 when you trade 10, Kalshi, Kalshi, trade on anything. Okay, so after the trade deadline comes and goes, Brewers president of baseball operations, Matt Arnold, was able to speak with the media for a little bit during the game on Monday night. And, Arnold had not really a ton that he really gave us in these comments. There's some things to kind of pick at it and look at there, but it was a lot of like boilerplate kind of stuff that he ended up giving, but just a couple of quotes did kind of stick out to me. Just kind of talking about the Tarek Skubal situation, right? Because there's so much talk about that. Matt Arnold said, quote, "I'm not going to talk about specific guys. Obviously, we're in a lot of different things. And like I said, if you're able to access what you can, you get it. And if not, you move on." So, like they had to pivot from Tarek Skubal, despite them having interest. And Pat Murphy talked about it prior to the game, just saying like, hey, look, if you're trying to think that we were not interested, you'd be incorrect. I mean, they felt they made an offer that was very good. Kurt Hogue of the Journal Sentinel reported that they made an offer that a lot around baseball thought was very good, and that a lot around baseball probably would have taken instead. But and Murphy was just kind of like, hey, look, like we were in this, like we worked very hard on that deal, on that offer, and the Dodgers ultimately ended up getting Skubal. And Matt Arnold's obviously not going to get too much into the specifics, and just kind of has to give that kind of boilerplate answer here. But look, he was also asked about making a big splash, right? Because so many fans, so many of us want to see them make that kind of big splash, like a Skubal, for example. And Arnold said this, quote, "We certainly talked about doing some irresponsible stuff, but I would say we tried to thread the needle, as Murph says, and hopefully we accomplished that." So irresponsible stuff is interesting. Because you look at, Matt Arnold has kind of talked about this, like, yeah, look, we want to add responsibly at the deadline. You want to be aggressive, but you want to be responsible. And so it's almost like you look at being aggressive as being irresponsible. And aggressive and irresponsible aren't necessarily the same kind of thing, or mutual exclusive kind of things. Like, you can be aggressive and responsible with it, and still actually have it be aggressive. Like, aggressiveness is not necessarily irresponsibility, but it almost kind of seems that way. And in terms of how Matt Arnold was kind of talking about it, and that could have been referring to Tarek Skubal. I think it was referring to Tarek Skubal about some irresponsible stuff in terms of the prospects you're willing to give up and willing to push some chips in. to try and get a guy like that. And like, yes, you can regard that as irresponsible, but you know, it's getting Tarek Skubal. It's getting a difference maker here for the team. So is that really irresponsible? That word choice there is certainly interesting. And also, what was interesting is the word choice here on offensive upgrade. So I asked Arnold about, if they aggressively pursued any upgrades to the offense at the trade deadline. And he gave an answer that was, there's not really a ton to it. He said, quote, yeah, we spent a lot of minutes on a ton of different things. We probably don't have enough time to go through all of it, but I can tell you we were in play on a lot of stuff this week. So we spent a lot of minutes on a lot of different things. We were in play on a lot of stuff. Okay, that gives zero specifics. That was a very evasive non-answer from Matt Arnold. A very unsatisfactory kind of answer, in my opinion. Also, I think that answer, if we kind of translate it, put it through the president of baseball ops translator, that comes out to no. No, they did not aggressively pursue offensive upgrades at the trade deadline. They acquired a bunch of pitchers. The focus seemed to be on pitching. They really weren't connected a ton to offensive players that were available. So, based on Arnold's answer there, it does not sound like they were aggressively or in any fashion looking at offensive upgrades. And a couple people pointed this out on social media too. It's like did he just kind of equate it by minutes? It's not we spent a lot of time talking about a lot of different things, or we spent a lot of hours talking about different things. It was regarded in minutes, which might tell you that the minutes is less than hours. Okay, that it was not a whole ton of time. It's like yeah, we spent a lot of seconds talking about that. It's like, sure, that could be correct. Technically, if you spend a lot of hours talking about it, you're technically spending a lot of minutes talking about it. You're spending a lot of seconds talking about it, but you generally don't equate it in terms of minutes. So it really does not seem like a subject that they were really aggressively talking about and trying to get upgrades for the offense, which on the one hand, I kind of get, in terms of just looking at the roster puzzle, where are you going to fit guys in? On the other hand, this is also the team that has the fewest home runs in Major League Baseball. And they could maybe use a little bit more thump in that lineup. But really what they need is Christian Yelich to start hitting again. They need William Contreras to start hitting. They need Jackson Chourio to kind of kick things back up as well. So you need kind of your big-time guys in the middle of the order to start hitting. That would certainly help quite a bit. But Arnold's comments did not lead me to believe that they looked at offense much at all at this trade deadline. The focus seemed to be on pitching, fortify the rotation, fortify the bullpen, because you need more pitching in order to get through the rest of the season and get through the postseason. Now, is the offense going to be good enough in October to get past the Dodgers' insane pitching staff, especially now that they've added Skubal? We shall see, but it certainly could be tough to overcome once again. But that is also the joy of October baseball. And also, when it comes to October baseball, I'm not so sure we're going to be seeing Brandon Sproat in it, because my goodness, Brandon Sproat really struggled in this one on Monday night against the Pirates. And when the Brewers acquire a starting pitcher at the trade deadline, and also you're getting Kyle Harrison back from the injured list, and that means someone's coming out of this rotation. And Brandon Sproat, whose ERA has been over 5 for a large chunk of the season, Sproat's kind of pitching for his job heading into Monday night, and he goes 3 innings, and in the 3rd inning, he gets the first 2 guys out, and then allows 2 base hits, allows a walk, loads the bases, and then gives up a bases-clearing double. So the Pirates are up 3-0. And then in the 4th inning, gives up a base hit, and it's like, okay, next batter. 2 wild pitches in a row. Back-to-back wild pitches. Before Sproat... So the runner goes from 1st to 3rd on back-to-back pitches that weren't even close. Before Sproat can get a new ball after the 2nd wild pitch, Pat Murphy is already out of the dugout and heading towards the mound. and he is making the pitching change. He has got the right arm up, and he is calling for Garrett Stallings out of the bullpen. He had seen enough. He was frustrated, and it's just kind of like, look, that is it. He pulled him mid at bat. It was a 2-1 count, and he's like, nope, I have seen enough of this. You're done. And brings in Garrett Stallings to calm things down. And I think that says all that we need to know about the state of Brandon Sproat in this Brewers rotation. We asked Pat Murphy about a post game, and he said, "Yeah, like Matt, like after this media session, Matt and I are going to have a conversation, and we're going to kind of figure out how we're going to make all this stuff fit, and what we're going to do with roles and stuff like that." And it is looking incredibly likely that Brandon Sproat is being not only removed from this rotation, but at the very least removed from this rotation. But I think there's a strong possibility he ends up getting optioned to Nashville after this, just to get him some kind of regular time down there. I mean, you have 3 new pitchers. Well, 2 new pitchers are going to be joining the active roster. Romero is still on the IL, but you're getting 2 new pitchers joining the active roster. Brandon Sproat has a game like that. You can do the math, and it's not looking great for Brandon Sproat in his roster spot. So that was certainly a tough one. You never want to see a guy pulled mid at bat, but you also understand why Pat Murphy did it. I mean, there is no question as to why he had to pull him at that moment, and it's frustrating. Murphy is frustrated. Sproat is certainly frustrated with himself, but got to learn from it. Got to be able to get better, and got to continue to move forward. And that's what he's going to do. That's what the Brewers are going to try and do here, and move forward with Dustin May and JoJo Romero and Antonio Senzatella. Those are your trade deadline reinforcements, really, to this roster. And we'll see how much they're able to fortify this group and try and make it 4 straight seasons, winning the NL Central. And not only that, try and get yourselves into a World Series here and win the National League pennant and hopefully win the World Series as well. But those are the moves that they ended up making, and we'll see what ends up happening down the stretch, and we'll be breaking it all down here on Brewers Daily. So appreciate all of you who subscribe and listen to every single episode. Even being able to get to meet some of you at games, absolutely love to see it every single time. Follow me on Twitter, or X as you may call it, at dgasper24. And appreciate all of you watching and listening, and we'll see you again next time for another episode of Brewers Daily.